The desert never lied. It gave nothing freely, and it took what it pleased. By dusk, the heat had fallen into the bones of Bitter Ridge, leaving the air heavy with dust and the kind of silence that made a man weigh every sound twice. That evening, a crowd had gathered outside the saloon, boots dragging in the dirt, whispers floating low. On the wooden porch, lantern light flickered across faces lined with hunger and suspicion. The girl, no more than 20, stood rigid, her shawl clutched to her chest as if it could shield her from the stares. Her voice was small, but the plea cut through the murmurs. "Please, don't pull it out." Every eye turned toward the man standing beside her. He was tall, shoulders squared beneath a dust-beaten duster, his hand hovering just above the worn handle of his knife. The sack at her feet bulged oddly, tied shut with coarse rope. Its weight had drawn the attention of every drunk, rancher, and drifter within 50 miles. The girl's words weren't meant for them, but for him. The rancher who'd stumbled upon her on the trail at sundown, dragging that sack behind her like it was chained to her very soul. He'd offered her water, then a ride back to town, but she'd refused to let the sack leave her side. By the time they reached Bitter Ridge, the whispers had already spread faster than fire in dry grass. Something was inside, something that should have stayed hidden. The rancher crouched, fingers grazing the knot. His face showed no hurry, but the tremor in the girl's voice had already planted doubt in his chest. The townsfolk pressed closer, boots creaking on the porch, their breaths tangling in the heat. "Best you leave it be," the girl whispered again, but softer now, as though she already knew no one in that crowd had mercy left to give. And still, his hand moved. Rope frayed beneath his pull, the knot loosened, the sack began to gape. Silence swallowed the town whole. Even the desert wind seemed to hold its breath. Then, everyone went still, their eyes frozen on what slipped into view. What slipped from the mouth of the sack was not silver or gold, nor guns or liquor, as many in the crowd had hoped. It was a strip of blood-stained cloth, damp and heavy, wrapped tight around something long and straight. When the rancher pulled a little more, the flickering lamplight revealed a dark wooden stock, worn smooth by many hands, a rifle, but not an ordinary one. On the butt, faint but still visible, was a carved emblem, a hawk with its wings spread wide. In Bitter Ridge, everyone knew that mark. It belonged to the deputy who had been gunned down out in the canyon 3 months earlier. His killer had never been found. The town had posted a reward, blood paid for with gold. The whispers rose like stirred hornets, thick and buzzing. Faces shifted from curiosity to hunger, from suspicion to hate. One word could turn the girl into the guilty party. She trembled, clutching the sack tight, her voice breaking. "It wasn't me. I was only keeping it." The rancher stood frozen, hands still gripping the sack's mouth. In his head, the desert wind howled, reminding him of nights when justice had no face. Every eye pressed on him, waiting to see what choice he'd make. One wrong move, and blood would stain the porch. He looked at the girl. Her panic was clear, but beneath it was something else. A burden that wasn't hers, a secret she had been forced to carry. A drunk bellowed from the crowd. "That's Sam Hayes' rifle. She killed him." The mob stirred, vengeance rising like wildfire. A few men's hands were already resting on their revolvers. The air thickened, ready to shatter. The rancher tightened his grip and drew the rifle completely from the sack. The hawk's wings on the stock glimmered in the light, like a scar come alive. The crowd held its breath. "No one knows the truth yet," he growled, voice rough but steady. But if you want blood, you'd better be sure it's the right one." Silence swallowed the porch. Only the rasp of desert insects filled the night. Then, from the back of the crowd, a shout. "Hand her over! She'll talk soon enough." A hand squeezed a trigger. The click was small, but it froze the air like ice. The line between justice and revenge thinned to a fraying thread. The girl collapsed to her knees, eyes pleading up at the rancher. In them was more than fear of death. It was a cry for rescue. And he knew his choice would decide the fate of this night. The crowd pressed forward, a wave of dust and breath, their hunger for answers turning into something darker. Bitter Ridge had seen its share of lynchings, justice done quick, clean and wrong. The girl's back pressed to the wooden beam of the porch rail, eyes darting, searching for a crack in the wall of faces tightening around her. The rancher shifted his weight, boots creaking against the planks. The rifle hung heavy in his grip, colder now, as if the ghost of Sam Hayes clung to the wood. He raised his voice, steady but sharp. "Step back." No one moved. Not even the crickets dared to fill the silence. Then a lean man in a tattered vest pushed forward, a revolver dangling loose at his side. His name was Mercer. Mean eyes, quicker hands. He spat into the dust before speaking. "Step aside, rancher. Ain't your fight. That rifle belongs to the town, and so does her neck." The girl flinched. The rancher's jaw tightened. He could feel the pull of the town's will, a tide against which one man's word was nothing. But he also felt the weight of her eyes, that wordless plea. "Mercer," the rancher said, his voice low as a growl. "You touch her. You'll have to come through me." The words cracked the air. A murmur rippled through the mob, half approval, half fury. Men shifted, hands brushing at holsters. The night bristled with the promise of gunfire. Mercer sneered, tilting his revolver up just enough to let the lamplight kiss its barrel. "Don't be a fool. You think she's innocent? Then why is she dragging around the deputy's rifle like a dog hauls bones?" The girl's breath hitched. She pressed her palms together, whispering something only the rancher could catch. "I swore to keep it safe, until I found the one who put it in my hands." The rancher's mind caught fire. She hadn't stumbled onto this by chance. Someone wanted that rifle carried, hidden, protected, and someone else wanted her silenced before she could speak the name. "Who?" he asked, barely moving his lips. Her eyes flicked toward the crowd, just for a heartbeat, then dropped back to the boards. The rancher followed her glance and saw it. A face in the mob that didn't flinch, didn't shout, didn't move. Sheriff Dalton. His badge gleamed faint under the lantern glow, his mouth set in a line that gave away nothing. But his hand rested heavy on the butt of his Colt. The rancher's gut clenched. The lawman himself, tied to this rifle. Mercer barked, "Enough stalling!" His gun came up. Time bent thin. The crowd drew breath as one. The rancher swung the rifle barrel up, not at Mercer, but at the sheriff. "You tell me," his voice thundered, "why this rifle smells of your trail, Dalton." Gasps cut the air like knives. And for the first time that night, the sheriff's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in fear. The crowd faltered. Murmurs swelled like thunder rolling over the plains. Sheriff Dalton's hand froze on his Colt, his eyes fixed on the hawk-marked rifle pointed his way. The lamplight danced against the sweat on his brow, though the night had cooled. Mercer growled, swinging his revolver back toward the rancher. "Don't you dare drag the sheriff into this." "Shut it," Dalton snapped, sharper than a whip. His voice, usually calm as the river, cracked with strain. The crowd stiffened. Men who had followed him for years now saw a flicker of something they couldn't unsee. The rancher's voice came slow, deliberate, each word like a nail driven into timber. This rifle belonged to Hayes. 3 months gone, shot in the back. Folks said it was bandits, but bandits don't leave a badge scratched into the stock. He turned the rifle, showing the faint gouge, the sheriff's own mark, carved in careless pride years ago. Gasps rippled. Dalton's face hardened, but his eyes betrayed him. The girl spoke then, her voice trembling but loud enough to carry. "He gave it to me, told me to run, said if I died with it, so be it. But if I lived, someone would see the truth." Every heart in the square seemed to stop. The lawman, the one meant to guard the town, was suddenly the shadow in its veins. Dalton's hand twitched on his Colt. But before leather could slap, the rancher's voice cut him down. "You pull iron now, Sheriff. You damn yourself before every soul here." The crowd shifted. Guns that had been half drawn now angled toward Dalton. Men who once obeyed him now watched with eyes sharp as knives. Dalton's lips thinned. He lowered his hand, slow, deliberate, but it wasn't surrender. It was defeat. His gaze swept the crowd, seeking a sliver of loyalty, finding none. The girl wept quietly, the sack slipping from her arms. The rancher stepped closer, laying a hand on her shoulder, steadying her like one steadies a spooked colt. Mercer spat into the dirt, eyes darting. He holstered his gun, muttering curses, but he didn't step forward again. The mob's hunger had broken. What replaced it was shame, bitter and heavy. Dalton spoke at last, his voice low. This town needed order. Hayes wanted chaos. I gave them what they couldn't give themselves. No one answered. Justice in Bitter Ridge wasn't about speeches anymore. It was about what came next. The rancher lowered the rifle. "Order without truth is just another kind of rot," he said. Dalton turned, pushing through the crowd. No one followed. No one stopped him either. The desert would take care of him, one way or another. The girl sank to the porch steps, clutching her shawl. The rancher knelt, pressing the rifle into her hands. "It's not your burden anymore," he said. "It's proof now, and proof will outlast fear." The night air softened, the mob dispersing in silence. Bitter Ridge stood changed, scarred but breathing. Above them, the desert stars glimmered, sharp and endless. Justice hadn't come with blood this time. It had come with truth, carried by those willing to bear it. And as dawn crept on the horizon, the rancher knew. Healing was as fragile as a rifle stock, but if held firm, it could steady a whole town.